Thank you, Blair, and thank you to the Southern Peanut Growers for asking me to speak. I retired on December 31st after 47 years in the peanut industry, and I feel very blessed to have had those many years in the industry. Because of peanuts, I was able to meet people all over the world, and I saw places that growing up in Climax, Georgia, I never imagined that I would see. And I met people from all over the world, from all over this room, and learned so many things that, and made so many friends, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak to you today. The year I was born was the first year that more acres of farmland in the United States were farmed with tractors than with mules. And I want to say that wasn't that long ago, but it was a pretty good time ago. It was 1954. But, I mean, think about it, that wasn't that long ago. The day I was born, they launched the world's first nuclear submarine, and we were still farming half the land in the United States using mules. So things have changed a lot. That year, 1954, the average U.S. peanut yield was only 727 pounds. 727. In my career, I saw the allotment system. A lot of you in this room remember the allotment system, and a lot of you in this room don't remember the allotment system. I saw the quota system, operated under both of those systems. And I was around and really in my stride when we ended the quota system and went to the market loan program that we operate under today. In real time, I saw the impact of production research. By the 1960s, the average U.S. yield was up to 1,500 to 25 pounds per acre. Awful by today's standards, but double what it was just 10 years before. Y'all know what that cause was, probably. It was the flow runner peanut as much as anything else. And then by the late 1970s, we were yielding around 2,500 pounds per acre, all because of production research. By then, we had fungicides. We'd gone from, I can remember as a kid, still using sulfur to try to control leaf spot. And when the first peanut fungicide was released, I was at a grower meeting with my dad as a little boy, and the salesman with DuPont said, it's here now, it's been late getting here, and it was a product called Been Late. And it didn't last long, but then we had an evolution of fungicides. With production research, we've hit yields and efficiencies at the highest ever rate. But we can't relax our efforts because there's always another product, always a competitor, another origin somewhere in the world that's ready to take our place. As I thought about what I was going to talk about today, and when Don Kaler called me and asked me to speak, we talked about some of the thoughts I've had, some of the things that I've been talking about for a couple of years were in some of the presentations, even this morning, especially around peanut oil. And I started with the peanut board in 2012, December of 2012. The previous 5 years, the U.S. average production of peanuts was 2 million tons. When I look at the last 5 years I was with the peanut board, the average production of peanuts in the U.S. was 3 million tons. So a whole 1 million tons more production in about 10 years' time. I think within 10 years, we're going to see 4 million ton production in the United States. I think it's coming. So If I leave you with nothing else today, what I want to leave you with is this question. What are you going to do with another 1 million tons of peanuts? USDA published the supply and demand report yesterday, and they published in that spreadsheet a little number that I think is going to reveal what their crop estimate is going to be pretty soon. 3.4 million tons in 2024. You saw Dr. Montfort's presentation this morning showing that just the 4 southeastern states represented here today are going to produce 2.4 million tons alone at a moderate yield, at an average yield. It could be considerably higher. I hope it is in some ways. At the National Peanut Board, my philosophy was, and some of our former staff is back there, some of the staff there, my former staff is back there. I always talked about a 3-legged stool. We got to grow domestic production. We got to grow exports. And at the same time, we've got to grow efficiency and yields through production research. And if any of those legs fails, it causes problems throughout the whole system. So we've been successful over these years. We've seen record exports that were able to absorb much of this additional 1 million tons of production that arose in the last 10 years. But we need to continue to push to sell more peanuts, every possible outlet, and that's been the theme of this morning's program. Demand for traditional uses is at an all-time high over the last few years. Per capita consumption for traditional food uses has been amazingly high. But our population growth is slowing. We're not increasing the population, but around 1% per year. And that's going to be hard to make up the ground, even with a little bit of per capita consumption. We have a very mature market. We have peanut butter in 94% of American pantries. It's hard to build on that very much, but I'm hoping that you're going to be able to do that. I encourage you to continue to support exports. It's going to be critical. Our competitors are numerous and formidable, and we'll need even more volume for the export markets. Now I'm going to talk a little about new uses. Here's where I think the great opportunities are, and it's a lot of what you've heard this morning. And I loved Jesse's speech talking about population, because population is going to have a huge impact on us going forward. We've got to look at where the pockets of population growth around the world and where the declines. And Japan is an example of one that's really rapidly declining. How many more people have they lost since you talked, Jesse? Every 20 minutes? Yeah, 20 people so a person per minute declining. As Dr. Delaberto spoke this morning, he used a really important statistic that I've been stressing. We grow 5% of the world's peanuts. We only produce 2% of the world's peanut oil. How do we fully participate in the peanut oil market globally? How do we participate in the oil markets domestically at a fuller extent? We talked about surpluses. We actually are a net importer of peanut oil in the United States. We have been for years and years. We've got a lot of opportunities. So what I started looking at is how do we expand? And I think we have to have a separate supply stream to grow peanuts specifically for crushing, to take advantage of biofuels markets, to take advantage of expanded edible markets for oil. And currently the average variety of peanuts grown in the U.S. is about 48% oil content. We have the genetics in place. We can produce 60%, 62% possibly content oil or peanuts with 60 to 62% oil content, but they can't be commingled with the peanuts that are going to peanut butter and candy and snacks. The average oil content of the peanuts we crush in the United States is slightly less than 40%, even though we grow 48%. And the reason is because the peanuts first go to a shelling plant, and we get every possible peanut that we can get to go to the edible use markets. And then we crush the rejects, the swivels, the damaged kernels, and those contain less oil. That peanut oil that we have to send to the market has been through the whole handling process, the shelling process. Shelling and handling for edible peanuts is an expensive process because it's slower compared to, say, crushing soybeans. Think about it. Crushing soybeans is a high-speed, high-volume process. Peanuts have to be handled in a way that you don't break them, that you don't knock the skin off, so that they'll be suitable for edible use. Dr. Diliberto showed a slide this morning where there was he talked about $157 on the oil side. And that was from some numbers that I actually worked up a couple of years ago, and I want to talk about that. So what I looked at is, okay, how do you make it where you as a farmer can grow a peanut for crush as a new crop, basically, that will be compatible to your bottom line at the same level as growing a peanut for edible? Makes sense, right? If you can make more money growing peanuts for the edible market, why would you grow peanuts for the crush market? Well, if you look at the value of oil stock and everything else, and then the value of a ton of peanuts for the edible market, the value of the peanuts for the edible market is $157 higher than for the crushing market. So how do you make it work economically where the farmer can afford to grow the peanuts, will grow the peanuts? You got to get cost out. You've got to get cost after the farm out. So anybody that says, well, the farmer will take less for growing for crush, and I said, why? Why would anybody think you would take less for growing for crush? I don't think so, unless they produce a higher yield or lower cost. And I haven't seen anything that says you could grow more for crush on a yield basis than for edible. So the way we handle peanuts, the way we dry peanuts, the way we go through a regular shelling plant, all those things need to be examined. If you're going to crush the peanuts, you could use continuous flow drying. You think about the cost of drying peanuts, and I talked to Kent Fountain this morning, and I want to have a conversation further with him. Y'all ride by a buying point sometime and look at the number of trailers, semi-trailers parked out there 9 months of the year, right? That just sit. The dryers that they're hooked to. Cost of a semi-trailer is $45,000, I think is what the last I heard. And the dryer that you hook it to is about $10,000. And Greg Baltz from Arkansas and I had a conversation about that average semi-dryer only makes about 5 turns during the season. Only about 5 loads of peanuts does it dry during the season. And then it sits there. That's a huge capital cost of equipment. And however many years the tires wear out, they have to have maintenance. It's just an expensive system that's necessary for drying edible peanuts. But what if you could replace that with a continuous flow drying system that would be higher speed, that you don't care if you put heat to them because you're going to crush them anyway. If they split, that's fine. If the skin comes off, that's fine. You are going to crush them anyway. You could send hopper bottoms out to the fields and bring them into a central location. And then you go through a sheller on the front end of the crushing plant that's a destructive type sheller, and you bypass the cost of a shelling plant. So there's going to be some studies, and I'm probably going to be participating in one of the studies with Texas A&M, looking at these, how do we get these costs out of our system? There are a lot of unnecessary costs in the way we handle peanuts. I'm excited about Dr. Toomer's work. I enjoyed hearing her talk about what she's doing in the area of using high oleic peanuts for poultry feed, and what she's going to be looking at for fish and other animals and other uses. I would love to see a way to genetically add lysine to peanuts so that it would become a complete protein, and then you wouldn't have to have soybean as part of a feed ration. If we do go to crushing a lot of peanuts and expanding our oil market, we're going to have a lot of peanut meal to market, and so finding feed uses is going to be really critical for that. I've been really encouraged about the innovations and progress in some of the domestic traditional food applications. For example, the Uncrustables product that Smokers came out with some years ago that is just growing by leaps and bounds. It's basically growing as fast as they can increase their production scale because they sell out. They can't produce enough. It's almost created a whole new category. A lot of the candy brands have done a super job in developing new products. Peanuts are a low-cost ingredient. I try not to say a cheap product, but a low-cost ingredient that makes them desirable for companies to use them in their applications. The snack peanut category is greatly concerning to me. In 2022, 2021, the major snack peanut brand was sold. It was a neglected brand by its previous owner, and it was sold for $3 billion to another company. I'm not going to call the name, but anyway, they've continued to not give it the attention that it needs. And so what's happened is, with their lack of marketing, you've seen generic brands, store brands, grow in market share and take that market share, but they don't promote, so the whole category has declined. Dr. Diliberto said the snack category has declined 10% over the last year. It's alarming. So we somehow have to get our arms around that. With all the challenges that we face as an industry, we still have a lot of reasons to be optimistic. We have incredible farmers. We have an efficient supply chain. We have a cohesive group of industry organizations who are working hard to grow domestic and export demand, looking at a lot of important factors like what Jesse looked at and what Dr. Diliberto talked about. There's a real strong commitment to production research at the state level and at the National Peanut Board level, and with organizations like the Peanut Institute looking at nutrition research. We've got brilliant scientists who are working to make us more productive, efficient, sustainable. We're going to find solutions to these challenges. We will find markets for these extra peanuts at some point, but we need to be looking today. We don't need to wait until the day comes. It'll be too late then. It'll be disastrous to you on the farm if you don't have reasonable prices being offered to make it worth planting peanuts. So as I close, Southern Peanut Growers has been a very important group to me. When I was hired by the National Peanut Board, I said at the breakfast this morning, the first group I spoke to, I got on a plane and I flew to Panama City the first week I was on the job at the National Peanut Board, and spoke to the Southern Peanut Growers leadership. And this group has been hugely supportive of me over the years, and I'm eternally grateful. And I'm eternally grateful. I think it's appropriate. I'm not officially National Peanut Board, but I feel like I'm speaking because of that role. So it's appropriate that you're the final group I speak to in that role, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.